Digital Digest, your weekly breakfast of insights, tips and tricks, and general information that will help anyone trying to move things forward in this digital world of accounting. This show is sponsored by ApprovalMax, the go-to approval tool now with both capture and pay. So check it out if you haven't seen that already. It's also brought to you by the digital disruptors who are trying to push the boundaries in this digital accounting space. I'm your host, Ryan Piercy, and this episode is on digital transformation projects, how to make them a success. And I'm lucky enough to be joined by Callum Wagstaff from BlueHub, probably one of the biggest known brands in the digital transformation space for accounting. And Callum, I believe, has been doing this for as long as I've been doing it at Scrum Bland under SB Digital. So it'd be good to learn a lot more about, I guess, some of the projects that Callum and his team get involved in. But first, Callum, can you talk a little bit about BlueHub for those people that have never heard of you?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me as well, Ryan. It's really good to talk about it. Not that I like to talk about BlueHub and myself. So yeah, BlueHub, we've been around for quite a while now. We originally started, app advisory, advising on all different things surrounding the zero space. But we found our niche, and our niche is, digital supply chain, essentially. And we help take businesses and digitalize what they're actually doing system-wise. So we implement inventory software, and then we also help advise and implement ecosystem applications that surround that inventory software. We specialize in a system called Sin7 Core. We do know other software, but that's really where we found that niche. We've been implementing Sin7 Core, or DIA, depending on what you want to call it. It's got a few different names now, for about 8 years exclusively. We worked with around 200 businesses, both implementing, taking them from a spreadsheet or Sage, and also optimizing people who have implemented it themselves. We also write integrations. Not the bullet doesn't stop there. We write integrations, we build apps. That's a small part of what we do, but a lot of the businesses we work with are weird and wonderful. So we try to accommodate all different areas.
I love it. I definitely want to know about the weird ones. But so I know that we've collaborated on inventory-based projects before, and like you two, you as a business are probably the go-to place for anything inventory related. Obviously, your focus is Sin7 Core. You've got the other Sin7 product called Omni. Do you do much with that system as well?
Yeah, so I mean, I could probably take 15 minutes doing a history lesson on Sin7, but yeah, you're totally right. There's two products, Sin7 Core, Sin7 Omni, both owned by the same group. They're two very similar softwares, but targeted to different businesses. So Sin7 Omni, their angle of attack with Omni at the moment is very much focused on people who are selling directly to retail. So EDI requirements, and if anyone doesn't know what EDI is, it's where you're connecting to your big supermarket chains like your Morrisons, Tesco, Sainsbury's. So a lot of brands will be selling to those people. Omni's a good system for that because it had built-in EDI functionality, and it does other functions quite well. Whereas Core is a much more diverse system, so it focuses on lots of different types of businesses, so wholesalers, distributors, even manufacturers, which we get a lot of uptake in now. And it still does retail absolutely fine. EDI just isn't built in. So we find Core, no matter who we speak to, we can tend to make it work for them, being as though they sell a product, essentially.
Yeah, and I like the fact that I guess historically you had the Zero Marketplace is probably one of the first where it made that a big success of all the systems that can connect in. Like QuickBooks have done the same, and Sage. But then the inventory space has now got that. So Unleash, Sin7 Core, you've got others like Fishbowl that are building their own little marketplaces around connections. And I think Sin7 Core is probably one of the broadest marketplaces out there. Would you think that's correct?
Yeah, Sin7 Core is literally just like, it's taken off, and it's module wise grown lots, and also its ecosystem around it grown lots. And I don't know if you've seen, or if anyone watching this has seen, but Sin7 have also acquired a system, as another one called Inventoro, which is a forecast planning tool. So not only are they building an ecosystem via integrations, they're also looking at acquiring businesses, similar model to Zero, as we know, and other platforms as such, and then building that into their platform. So yeah, it's changing lots really, and you're getting different businesses with different requirements, so there's more integrations needed all the time, and people writing their own integrations. So it's just building and building up, and like becoming this huge platform essentially.
It's behemoth that if you need something, you just plug it in as you need it. And it'd be really good to get your thoughts on Inventoro though, because we saw the release, we talked about on the Digital Tools in the Cruel World podcast. We wondered, is this going to be a big benefit? Is it going to take time to, properly be embedded? Have you seen it kind of being now used a lot, or is it still quite new?
Maybe. Maybe. Yeah. So it's really exciting what I've seen. With me and Matt were lucky enough to go to Denver. We went to the Synth Partner Summit, and we got some sneak peeks of like what's to come in that area. And I was cautious because forecasting in AI is like pretty tough because every business is different and does it differently. And I've always been a bit cautious on stepping into stock forecasting. But from what I've seen, it's really smart and it makes it really intuitive. So it's not just like one module in the area of the system where it's going to give you some stock forecasting. It's in your face throughout the system. So you're looking at your stock availability and it's giving you smart figures using the Inventoro logic, or you're on your sales screen and it's again feeding that logic through. So when it comes, it will be a really big game changer. And I don't want to put too much pressure on Sin 7, but from what I've seen, it looks exciting. I don't know when they're announcing it formally, but it looks good. It looks good.
We're definitely in that era of exciting AI, which we're just waiting to just go over the cusp of actually being really effective, aren't we? So, no, thank you for diving into that. Thank you for giving an overview of BlueHub and I guess the specific areas it focuses on. But we need to talk about a specific digital transformation project. I want to hear about one that has been really kind of either interesting or you did a lot with or was a big success for a client. So if you can pick one, talk a bit for it, maybe the main issues that they were having and why they reached out to you in the first place.
Yeah, so we're lucky enough to work with almost all types of industries and all types of different, again, weird and wonderful clients. You'd be surprised about some of the products that our clients sell. But, within the past 12 months, we were really lucky enough to work with a client who manufactures parts for Formula One, which is extremely exciting. They're in and around Silverstone Racecourse, which is, again, really exciting. And they came to us with a few very specific issues, and the main one being they're on a platform that was very unique to them. Really, there was only a couple of users in the UK. It was built by a small company, so they had a lot of flexibility with the platform, but it was also very immature. So it didn't integrate with Zero. It didn't have much visibility on what's actually going on in their business in terms of financials, stock information. Again, because it's a small company, there wasn't many updates to the software and they had to really fight for everything. So for such a growing business, now this business is really growing and they've really found a good niche for themselves. The software just wasn't keeping up. Zero, they were already on Zero and that was performing great, but this inventory system, or MRP system, manufacturers will call it, just wasn't keeping up for them. So that was their main challenge when they came to us, is we want to have shop floor data visibility on like what's actually going on with manufacturing, and an integration with Zero because it's becoming a nightmare with manually transferring information, which is a really, really common request that we get.
It is crazy the amount of clients that come across to me as well, where they're like, yeah, we like our system. We like, the operational system does what we need, but we've now seen what we can do with Zero, how much automation can be brought in. And we tend to retype everything or import, export, and it just feels cumbersome. Can we do something about it? And normally the first conversation is, well, you may not be able to stay on your operational system. We're happy to talk about it and see if they can, evolve their system to get there. But realistically, the architecture of that system may not kind of be the best fit for it. So was there, because what I love when I have these initial conversations is it starts off and you kind of explain what is possible and it opens their eyes and they come up with all these other things they really like to have as well. So was there anything that in those conversations they went, oh, it'd be really good if we could do that, and then you're like, maybe we could achieve it?
Yeah, absolutely. And this client in particular, it was a huge transformation on what they were doing. So to help you visualize it, they manufacture parts for Formula One essentially, and they have lots of different rooms where different parts of the process happens. And let's say there's 6 rooms with an office upstairs. Pieces of paper were going from the office into all of those 6 rooms and back up to the office at the end of the process. So it was like, really delayed. It was happening. Everything was updated at the end of the day. They now went all in on Sin 7 and use what's called the MES module, which is an app for updating manufacturing. And they have iPads in each room now and the office. So everything just happens through each stage of the process. Now, I showed them that on the original demo and they're like, yes, that's what we want. and now it's actually being rolled out, and the managing director and the owners and the people in the business can actually see who's doing what on which job, how long is it taking us, how long do we think it was going to take us as well, so they can compare that. So actual visibility on the shop floor and all these different rooms and communication has just been really improved. Don't get me wrong, there's been pain throughout the process. That was a huge change for them, but where they're at right now is, like, in my opinion, was really successful, and been able to transform and just get rid of that paper because it was a pain.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. And yeah, we'll talk a bit about the pains later, because I do love diving into those, because it's always, everyone's like, oh yeah, it's just glory all the way through. No, you have to go through the pain. You have to feel the pain before you get to the other side. And then when you're on the other side, you're like, how do we operate before? Like, how do we manage to work? But look, I guess on that, because they're having to take a leap of faith, having to jump in with you and invest quite a bit of money up front to kind of get those gains. Talk us a bit through your approach, your process, in how you set it out from that initial conversation to maybe not quite to the implementation phase, but kind of that research, that advisory aspect.
Yeah, so I imagine we don't work too differently to most businesses that are in this space, but as a whole, we have a 3-stage process: discovery, scoping, implementation. Discovery and scoping. So discovery is, we do that for free with people, and it's really just to figure out if we're compatible and if we can help them and how we might be able to help them. We're independent. I don't want to put someone on Sin7 that I don't think it's going to work for. So during that discovery phase, I'm just trying to understand what the business does, what they're trying to achieve, and give them some pretty transparent feedback on what I would do in their position. And then if I do think it's going to work, I'm going to offer them our next step, which is what we call a business process and system review. It's scoping. That scoping phase, you have to give it a fancy name, of course. But that scoping phase, it's really to achieve a couple of different things. Selfishly, it's so we know what to implement, like what are we actually going to do when we get to the implementation. It's expectation setting for the client. So what are they actually going to get? That was a massive lesson learned for us when we started doing this. You have to really be clear of what is the client going to get? What does success look like? And that scoping is a big part of that. So telling them no to things, saying yes to things, and what is it going to look like? And it's also buy-in from the staff and the people within the business. So showing them, and we structure scoping around what's called proof of concept. So we're proving the concepts of the software. So showing them, expectations, and also getting buy-in from the people. Okay, this is what your day job's going to look like. Are you happy with that? Yes, I am. Brilliant. Then we can mark that down as a process. So, and then outside of Sin7 Core, we're identifying gaps that Sin7 Core is going to produce. So, do they want to print labels for shipping? Okay, then maybe we need to go and explore the shipping market. Okay, do we need to do some different automations? Okay, we might need to go look at something like Zapier. So once we've got Sin7 as the core, we're then going to identify those gaps and look into the ecosystem to try and plug those. Not always in phase 1. It might be phase 2, 3, 4, and beyond. But it's so the client knows, again, once they're in implementation and beyond, what that will look like.
Cool. Yeah, I've got some specific questions about elements of this, because there's a lot of overlap with how we work, but every, I guess, business or team does this slightly differently. So on the discovery, then, how long do you tend to spend? We tend to spend about an hour before, I guess, we properly understand what they're looking to do, what limitations are, and then we can help. Are you similar?
Yeah, about the same. So we do. It sounds a bit long-winded now I'm thinking about it, but we actually do 3 calls with people in discovery. But we want to make sure we give them enough time, and we're making sure they're the right fit for us. So we do an initial call. That's just to set budget expectations, timeline expectations, how we work. And then it will normally have a technical discussion with them, and that's where I normally get involved, and I'll talk about what are their actual requirements and can the software do that. That again is about 20 to 30 minutes, and then we'll actually do a demo with them as well. So it's like a sneak peek of the next phase. We don't like to call them demos either, and Matt will tell me off for that. It's more like system deep dives and going deeper into the software, because it's not scripted. Like, I do genuinely look at the business, see what they need, and I'll try and put those snippets into the deep dive so we can try and identify those early on. So in whole it's probably about 2 hours, but split over a couple of different calls. So yeah, that's what discovery looks like.
Makes sense, and I promise not to tag Matt in this so that he won't hunt you down for calling it a demo. I mean, I guess from our approach, we're not going into some specific, we're not as focused as you, so we don't do the demos early on, because at this point we're not entirely sure what system they're going to be on. We could demo anything; it's not going to necessarily help them. But yeah, we do it all in one session. But I think that's because I do every part of it, so it just makes sense to do it all at once.
Yeah.
Whereas if we got different elements and different team members, yeah, we could break that down. And then when you're coming into scoping, or the very long-winded title you gave it to sound posher, do you do any process mapping? Is that something that you think is fundamental to the process?
Yeah, we do process mapping, and it's an interesting one. We're always toying with to what level of detail we go with process mapping. So before clients get involved with scoping, we give them homework or preparation guides, we call them. So we send them like a couple of the forms, and it asks them to detail what they're doing right now from their point of view, and also what they want to achieve. It gets them thinking for that first meeting. And during that first meeting, we go through that in more detail and ask questions and look at different areas through there. Sometimes if we feel it's beneficial, or if the client wants to upgrade to it, we'll map their existing processes, but we don't actually always do it, because sometimes we're moving so quick and we're focused on what's to come rather than where we've come from. So if the client wants it, or we think it's going to be beneficial, we will map out their current existing processes, but normally we just keep it on a bullet point. Where we do process maps really heavily is what we've then defined in those proof of concepts. So what does the new sales process look like? What does the new purchase process look like? What does the new manufacturing process look like? Because that's our Bible then for the implementation. This is how we're going to train them. This is how the system's going to work. So yeah, we focus much more on the future than the existing or the to be at the moment.
And what do you use? Use Miro or Visio, or what do you use?
We use Visio. We use Visio. Yeah, we found Visio becomes a little bit more familiar to people, and people also recognize the icons with their different meanings a little bit better. However, I've used other tools because clients have already got them. They're all absolutely fine. Most people tend to just look at the pretty shapes and the words anyway. They don't really care. So yeah, Visio at the moment, but we change, and we're not really stick to a particular piece. But Visio's pretty good.
Yeah, well, the only thing that we do differently, and we've made it kind of fundamental, is that we love to calculate a return on investment for our clients. So we map the before and after, and we put down, I guess we can calculate a cost of operations by how long they're going to take, how many iterations they've got, and who's doing it. So by doing that, we can generally identify an amount of saving, and therefore, based on how much it's going to cost to implement, how quickly they'll get a return on it. And we found that works really well. For certain businesses, certain ones don't care because they're going to do it anyway, right? They've kind of reached out to that. We're doing the change. We have to do the change. We don't care if it's a return on investment. But because we've got a very set process now, we do the mapping anyway. That helps us understand the flows and what. Sometimes some points we're like, oh, that key point there, we're gonna struggle to replicate in the new system. How do we get around that? How do we build the flow around that? So, but no, it's really good that you've got this kind of similar process that you go through. So once you've identified it, once you've done the process maps, once they understand the journey, how does the transition go then into the implementation phase?
Yeah, so once we've done the scoping, we've cleared everything up and everyone's happy, we go into the implementation phase. Now, our implementation is very structured. We have a couple of different phases that we go through. We've been doing this for 8 years now, probably on the inventory piece. So stages have changed, and we've swapped them around and moved them around, but right this second, this is what our process looks like. So we front load system set up and data because they're the most complicated parts. Data is where projects statistically fail the most because it's so reliant on the client. So we start off with, we take all the data from their current system, we help them putting it into the system format, but they're going to have requirements that they have missing data for. So they're going to have to go and collect that. And some people don't have the time for that because it's just day jobs. And we try our best to help them with that. But that's the first thing we try and do, just because it can be so time consuming for people. So we start with data, and then we upload that into the system alongside system setup. We then do what we just set up all the integrations. So any integrations that we've defined during the scoping, so that be Xero, Shopify, really common ones, any shipping apps or anything like that, we get those plugged into the software and confirm how we're going to actually run those. And then the main core parts of the implementation are training. So we train the users on the system. Now, this is a change to our process in the last 18-24 months. So we train people on the software first. We train them on how the software actually works, the functions, the buttons, how it navigates. And then once we've done that, we go into what's called user acceptance testing. And that's where we're training the people on their actual day jobs and their processes and confirming them that they're actually happy with how everything's going to run. Interestingly, we used to do that process the other way around, and we've changed it because it makes sense to know the system and then make the important decisions on how it's going to run. And that's been really successful. We do that online, we do it on site. We've even been doing them 2 stages back to back on days with people, and that's been also successful. So we train them on the Monday, and on the Tuesday we do the UAT. That's actually been really successful. And then we go into crunch time, which is go live period, and that's transactional resets, stock positions, making sure everything's ready for switch on and go live, and making sure everyone's actually comfortable with everything, and actually just flicking the switch per se, and agreeing a date on which people go live. Now, there is intricacies throughout that process, but at the highest level, they're the stages that we go through.
Yeah, no, that all makes sense. And I guess we're similar in that we've been kind of bringing further forward the data side because of how many issues you can have if towards the end you're like, okay, well, now give us the data, and it comes like, well, this is a complete and utter disaster. Yeah. How are we going to get this into a format that's usable?
Of course.
So yeah, we've been dragging that forward, and yeah, we've been reviewing our training, and I think we started to split it, partly just because there's so much that they have to absorb straight away. So trying to spread that out over time, it's just more likely, I guess, for them to absorb that in a way that means it's going to stick and stay there going forward. But do you, and this is what a lot of teams have, do you have that kind of in that early period of support, which is like a high intensity support? You normally kind of a separate charge or a higher charge for a period, and is that done by a dedicated team or the same as the normal support team?
Yeah, good question. So first 4 weeks when a client goes live with us, that's all part of their project. So 4 weeks of support is included as part of our projects. And within that first 4 weeks, we give them our most premium package that we'd offer normal support clients. So, we'll be there at the end of a phone. We can jump on Teams meetings. We'll adjust things in their system for them. We'll, pretty much make sure they're happy with everything and do everything we can for them. Then after that first 4 weeks, we transition into ongoing support, and that's where we have different packages with different tiers for all different requirements. We have a base package that's just answering questions. Our highest package is, we'll come on site and just train you for the day. So it really varies. We have a dedicated team for support. Now we've grown quite a lot over the years. So we have a support manager that looks after all of our support clients and making sure they're happy, first point of contact. And then we also have a dedicated personnel for looking after support inquiries and also optimization as well. So improving those accounts once they've gone live. Don't get me wrong, people go on holiday, so people have to dip in now and again. So it does change, but we try and keep it to a dedicated team because it just creates continuity. People like to know who they're speaking to, the same people. You'd be really surprised around the relationships that we build with people. Some of our clients have been working with for as long as I've been doing this, 6 years, and you've got the personal number, so people like those relationships, and it's you build a good connection and support them.
I think it's more than that, right? Because those people then understand that business, they understand the nuances. So when a question's asked to them, they're like, I know exactly where your problem is and how to resolve it, because I understand where, I guess, the challenge is. The problem, I guess, with some of these big software vendors is where they've got that very broad support. Someone will ask a question and then it's back and forth for maybe like, I don't know, 50 support tickets. It's a very exaggeration there, but basically just try to understand what the problem is so they can fix it. And that it doesn't necessarily have to be phone support, but that dedicated person that understands the issues and also supports the connections between systems, I think it's a need, a must now as clients build out a modern ERP. But one thing I guess that I want to go back to, and that's on this project, you said, everyone has to go through the pains before they get to the So talk a bit about through some of the pains of this project and some of the big successes of the one that was kind of working in this F1 space.
Yeah, the main one is they're on iPads, right? So it's technology, and it's a big change for anybody. Like the MES, the function where people can update the manufacturing, is fantastic, but you have to use an iPad, you have to log into an iPad, and it sounds crazy, but not everyone does that day to day. Not everyone owns an iPad or uses this type of technology. That's a massive transition to ask their staff to go ahead and use and do. So that was a big pain, you know, and also people weren't doing it live. They were doing it at the end of the day. So that's a massive shift in mentality that I've just done a job, I have to update this right now. So that was one of the biggest pains for them. And it, surprisingly, which we get a lot, the other one was actually integrating with Zero. So they came to us and wanted the integration with Zero, but then when the integration with Zero happens, it's like, well, what is all this data coming across and what does it mean? That's so common. And it's understanding that part of things, and you know, when transactions happen and why it's doing certain bits. So those were the main ones. There's definitely others as well. They were the main one for these guys is they were on a system, like I said, that was small and they had a lot of flexibility with. So if they couldn't do something, they'd pick up a phone and the guys were like, yeah, we'll probably add that next week. They're now on off-the-shelf cloud software where they don't have that much wiggle room. So then when they find out something can't be done, they don't have much flexibility, and that can be a pain from coming where they used to be able to change things. So yeah, those are the main ones really, and there's probably others that I haven't mentioned, but like definitely, you know, adoption and buy-in from the staff of making this huge transition, Zero point of view and an actual like physical technology point of view.
No, I completely get that. Change management is as important as identifying the right technology and implementing it effectively. And so understanding early on, and something we're trying to bring the process is that assessment of actually how difficult is those individuals going to find it to change. And you have to do that really gently, because you don't want to feel like you're questioning people and, you know, and basically make them worried about their own job. All you're trying to do is gauge how much support do your team need in certain areas. And one thing that I guess we differ is we generally find the Zero side a lot easier with our clients, probably because we're accountants. So that's the bit we understand. So we naturally can guide that through. It's more the tech side we kind of struggle on. And that's probably where you're finding it's simpler, because I guess your background compared to the finance element. So I guess there's some big wins, some big challenges in any of this project. But one thing that I always like to gauge is, what would you say from live date to where they, you know, things were fully embedded, like when they were properly now using the correct system? How long do you think that was? There's always that period of pain, isn't
there? 12 months, potentially
more.
more. Yeah,
12 months. Oh wow, it's a big one.
Yeah, sometimes it's as little as 6 months usually, but it can be a long time with inventory software, because it's a huge jump and a lot to learn. You know, we always use the analogy of, you know, when you learn to drive a car, you get taught how to specifically, you know, navigate the roads, but you don't actually learn to drive until you're on the road. And that's exactly where these guys are at, and most of our projects that go live. So that period can be as long as a year, but it can be as little as 3 to 6 months. And for these guys, it did take that long because they were really pushing Sin7's cores functionality and using all of it. So the learning curve was much steeper. So, you know, definitely minimum of 6 months for these guys, and that it took them a year to really be where they're at right now. And there's still improvements to be made, and there's still changes they can have, and they're growing at, you know, a crazy rate, which is fantastic. And, you know, lucky to be able to support that. So, but yeah, it takes a while. Some people, you know, leave us after a month because they're just up and running, but some it really does take that long.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. And generally, when I'm talking to clients, I say you've got to allow at least 3 months before you start to feel the benefits, because you've got that change curve where, you know, even though people are doing things and it is faster, they take longer because it's not natural to them. And so until they get into that kind of automated process of, I know where things are going, I can just click here, do that, jump in, do this, everything takes a lot longer. But I think that's a perfect place to wrap up this week's show. So thank you for coming on, Callum, and talking us through, I guess, a project that you've done at BlueHub. Hopefully, for everyone that's listening, this episode provides you with valuable insights you can take forward. Please do check out the notes for the links to anything we've discussed, Digital Disruptors, BlueHub, and our wonderful sponsor, ApprovalMax, plus anything, anyone, any tech that we've referenced in the show as well. If you want to ensure you catch future episodes, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure you look out for the live show every Thursday morning. And we look forward to speaking to you again.